Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with another video. No camera today because it's late, and as you can probably tell from the sound of my voice, I'm very tired. But I wanted to do this video because I've been thinking about doing a review of the Nubia comic since I ended up reading it to prep for my debate with Nerdette. I think it was last Sunday, right? And so I knew because we had discussed it via emails that the whole Trans Amazon thing was going to be a topic of discussion. So I read the comic to make sure that I understood exactly what the story was, right? And I figured since I read it, let me do a review of the comic, especially since I haven't done comic reviews probably well over a year. For those who are newer to the channel, I actually started out the channel doing uh, comic reviews here and there. You look at some of my earliest episodes where I didn't show my face or anything. I would do comic reviews. I did like uh, two reviews of the Captain Marvel run of the Captain Marvel 2019 one. It's like issue 1 and like issue 4. And I think I did a review of a very bad Batgirl comic, one where she's like chasing around this like military sniper assassin terrorist guy, and she has to protect some sort of like AOC wannabe. But anyway, um, just as time went on, I just fell off from doing reviews, and to be honest, I don't read a lot of modern day mainstream like Marvel or DC comics because I am not a fan of the quality. And believe it or not, despite the content for the channel, I am not the type of person to keep following something that I've grown to strongly dislike. Right? But since I did review the comic, I read the comic for the Tristan debate, I figured let me do a review of it. If I had the time, I would do a different video and I would have images and I would be able to better point out what my issues are with it. But I do not have the time, and quite frankly, uh, the story is not interesting enough for me to make the time to put in the effort to make a better quality video, right? So it is what it is, right? There are other people who show images and whatnot. Good for them. I'm not doing that. I don't have the time and I don't have the emotional investment to go through the work to make that type of video. But I will try to give like some of my general impressions, and I will try to be as objective as I can with the story. I will try to focus on the story and my issues with it more than anything else, and I will try to keep the discussion of the trans stuff to a minimum because it's not really prevalent or all that important in the story itself. It's something that is an external thing that people are talking about in relation to the story because of the tweets that Vita Ayala and I think her name is Stephanie Williams put out to get attention for the book. But as I said in the Nerdette stream, and I think even in the videos about this about the Trans Amazon issue, the Trans Amazon issue is overshadowing who's supposed to be the star of the comic, which is Nubia. Though to be fair, I don't think that this is exactly the best comic. At least the first issue, I feel really does a disservice to the character of Nubia, and I will explain why. But I will try to be as objective as I can. If you've read it, and if you have any opinions, positive or negative, please let me know in the comments of the video. So let's get a few things out of the way. So this is the DC website, right? Take a good look at this. Oh, sorry. Take a good look at this picture of Nubia. because it's probably the most action oriented she ever comes across in the comic itself for the first issue. Right, you see the full cover here. Very nice pose, but this is the most action oriented you ever see her. And for me, this is a the lack of action that she takes in the story is actually what really bothers me because I think that it's not accurate to her character. Right? So let's read this. After the thrilling event of Infinity Frontier, Nubia becomes queen of Themyscira, but the but the new title also brings challenges. With the unexpected arrival of new Amazons, our hero. I find it interesting that they use the masculine hero instead of heroine. But anyway, maybe they're afraid of association with the drug of the same name. I've been dancing with Mr. Brownstone. Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop. Is forced to reckon with her past and forge a new path forward for her sisters. Little does she know, a great evil grows beneath the island, and it's up to this former guardian of Doom's doorway to unite her tribe before paradise is lost forever. This unforgettable miniseries, I would strongly disagree with that. From writers Vida Ayala and Stephanie Williams, along with all-star artist Alitha Martinez, Future State, brings the fan favorite character back to the DCU for good. After Nubia, the world of the Amazons will never be the same. So, the art. I actually thought the art was good. I think the art in the book, this is obviously the cover, but I think the art in the book overall is fine. I actually think that there are several panels where it's a portrait, where it's just a headshot of the woman who's speaking, right? And I thought those were like probably some of the strongest art in the book, right? The art in the book really is strong toward the last few pages, right? When it sort of reveals the threat, right? That the threat has been unleashed or is about to be unleashed because you have one character, I think her name is Penelope or something like that. She's having like visions of Themyscira burning, right? Kind of like Rome did all those years ago. So the art um, toward the end, I think, really is really good. It was actually the colors for the most part that I had an issue with, like you see here with the background. It's everything is a bit muted, even in the beginning pages where it's supposed to be a bright sunny day. Nothing looks terribly bright, so that was sort of my issue art wise. The line art, right, the drawing I thought was okay. It's actually better than what I've seen in modern day comics. It's not perfect. There are issues like there will be some panels where like a character's eyes are missing. There's one panel where like Nubia is talking and her eyes are white, and I'm like, unless she has somehow become Storm or she's using powers, like why are her eyes white? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But I felt that the art was solid. I would give the art like a B, right? The colors, not so much. I felt the colors were just very muddy. I would say that overall. But again, I actually do think that the art really toward the end really visually is impactful, and the colors are really good there. The funny thing is that I think because just in general the scenes depicted there are so dark, the muddiness of the colors actually works. But I had much more of an issue with the colors than I did with the interior art itself. But still, even with its flaws, with its issues, overall it's still much better than what I've seen in modern day comic books from Marvel or DC um, recently. Another thing is that, as you see, we get the summary kind of here, but there's no summary page, at least none that I came across in my readings, right, explaining how or why Nubia is the queen of Themyscira, right? Nothing to give a summary of the events of Infinity Frontier. And I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, I was never that person who was going to read like a totally different book just to get the story on an event going on. Like there would be like old issues of like X-Men. It would be like to find out what happened. Read Avengers. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Tell your story in the series you that I'm reading. I'm not. I understand from a like marketing perspective, right? Why companies do this because they want you to read the other titles, so hopefully you'll buy them. I get from a business standpoint why they do that. As a reader, though, I find it annoying. I'm not going to be reading all of these dang side books with different characters and different heroes that, for the most part, I'm not terribly interested in. It's different if it's a book or characters that I have an interest in. But if I don't have an interest in it, it's like I'll just skip it. I'm not gonna go through the trouble of reading it. So perhaps they left it out so that interested parties would pick up in Infinity Frontier, but I'm not the type to do that. I did not read in Infinity Frontier. I have no interest in what happened there. But I will say is this: even if they don't want to put a summary page, I do think that some of the opening dialogue could have benefited from at least giving a hint at how she became Queen of Themyscira, right? Because the story doesn't really start out. How do I put it? The story doesn't start out necessarily with Nubia as queen. Some of the first images, because it starts out in a flashback, so the first images are actually when she's been resurrected on Themyscira, and the art there is nice too. And to be honest, given the sexual politics right going on in the media today, I'm surprised that the artist was even allowed to depict or imply, that a woman was resurrected in the nude, right? I actually thought that the way Nubia was drawn in those opening images was very tasteful, right? It was very tasteful, and it was done well in a way where obviously because it's a teen book, right? Certain parts of the body are going to be censored, but it didn't look too obvious, right? So I will give the artist credit for that. I thought those images were pretty good, but the opening panels are basically a flashback, right, of Nubia being resurrected via the Well of Souls, and she doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know why she's at Themyscira, and then Hippolyta is greeting her, and then there's this like ruckus, like lightning strikes or thunder roars or something, and then the Well of Souls seals itself shut somehow, or at least that's the implication. And then it sort of comes into the modern day, into the present, where Nubia, who is now queen, is welcoming the new recruits because the Well of Souls has just opened again. And the biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues that this comic has, is that nothing happens. And for me, it's not terribly exciting. And I'm going to be clear. I'm not saying that the very first issue of a comic needs to have, wall to wall, page to page action. I'm not saying that it needs violence or anything like that. It doesn't need a strong action oriented visual like a fight. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that literally nothing of note happens until the very end. And there is no progression to these things, at least in my opinion. It's just a lot of talking, which is not necessarily bad. Dialogue can create suspense, it can create mystery, right? It can be used to move a story forward. So, a talky comic is not always a bad thing. I'm a Chris Claremont fan, he's very talky. But it doesn't, the way it's written is that we don't learn about a lot of things, right? For example, unless you are very familiar with the character of Nubia, or you're like me and you decided to sort of uh, research her a little bit, right? You wouldn't know from the story itself that she used to be a guardian of Doom's doorway. That's actually from the rebooted origin story that she got when they redid their universe all over again in the late 1990s. Right, Nubia's original background, more or less, was that she was born on Themyscira. She's the sister of Wonder Woman. She was kidnapped by Ares, and I want to highlight this, right? Because this is what I'm going to say is going to be important later when I discuss why Nubia's character I think was really really disrespected here. We are talking about a character whose original origin story is that she is kidnapped by Ares, the god of war, right? The god of violence and bloodshed and brutality. And she's raised by him, and she's served as his champion for a time, right? That's part of her origin story from the earlier mid 70s. And then later on, she became a more or less a queen, right, of her own island where she led men, male warriors, right, who would fight for the right to marry her, right, and several other stories. And then, again, when they did the reboot in the late 1990s, she was the guardian of Doom's doorway. This woman is a warrior. She is trained to fight. She is aggressive, right? Diana was also trained to be a warrior, but like one of her defining traits is like compassion, right? She'd rather talk it out than fight it out. Nubia, in my opinion, is the exact opposite because of the way she was raised. Keep this in mind as I go through the review, right? Because this image right here may be the only part of Nubia in this story that to me seems in any way accurate to the character. Right? But anyway, as I was saying, the Amazons don't do anything in this. There's talk of, visions. One character is having visions, and there's talk of, how to guard or protect uh, Doom's doorway, but nothing's ever done. Nothing is ever done. Nothing progresses at all. And that is what bugs me about this story. It's just a bunch of characters standing around and talking. Nubia talks several times with some woman named Philippus, and I don't know if Philippus is her lover or her advisor or both, but all they do is talk. They talk and they don't come to any resolution. They don't come to any decision. Right? It's dialogue that goes nowhere. And to me, it's just like, okay, you are completely losing my interest here. I don't get a sense of we are moving somewhere. And as I was saying about uh, what is it? Doom's doorway, right? Nubia used to be the guardian of that door. That door is where the problem is, right? One would think, given her personal history and her personal connection, that the dialogue may want to point out, right, that when she was younger, when she wasn't the queen, when she was the new kid on Themyscira, she was assigned to guard Doom's doorway. It's never mentioned. There is so much information about Nubia that you have to go outside and research. That is never overtly mentioned or acknowledged, right? And to me, that doesn't help. Leaving your lead character a complete mystery and depending on the reader to know about the character, especially one who's fairly obscure like Nubia, right? It's not like Nubia is this very famous character or anything like that. It's not like she's like A-list. I'm not trying to be rude. That's just the truth. And given that the most recent Nubia comic that came out this year was the YA one, Nubia Real One, which did not help the character at all. Granted, it's it's very it's YA, right? So it's in no way connected to the regular DC universe, but still, that comic didn't help matters. Here's your chance to redeem the character, to make her interesting. You have DC lore that connects her to Doom's doorway, which is the very problem that they're facing, and you don't include any overt dialogue that makes it clear that, hey, she's familiar with Doom's doorway because she used to guard it. Failure of writing, in my opinion. You can drop some hints about a person's past in a story, especially if it will connect them to current events. You have to, it's a web, right? You have to make things stick together. You have to connect things. Because if you were not aware of that, then Nubia comes across as completely divorced from this issue, right? And it comes across like, oh, a leader having to deal with a problem instead of the former guardian of Doom's doorway having to deal with the doorway opening toward towards the end, right? If you know of that relationship, everything's different. Nubia is not just a leader now; she's a former guardswoman who has personal experience with this. So I think that not acknowledging that um, was a real missed opportunity, right? So there's that. The second thing, because again, nothing much of note happens in the book. You have like the five recruits who, interestingly enough, all look very similar. Most of them are brown skinned and they look, let's just say, African American for the sake of argument, which I find interesting because of the fact that even in the comic, it explains that the Well of Souls, right, the Well of Souls, Cavern of Souls, resurrects women who died as a result of violence in man's world, right? Doesn't quite explain what type of violence, just that violence in man's world. Okay. So if it's choosing people from man's world, from the regular world, women who died because of violence, well then wouldn't you have all different types of women from all over the world, right? Women who are Asian, Latino, Hispanic, young, old. None of the characters have any real diversity visually, in my personal opinion. They all look like African American women. Some are lighter skinned, some are darker skinned, but they all. It's like, was it only choosing from like black neighborhoods or something? Or Africa? It's like, what is this? Right? Even in age, like the only overtly older person that you see is Magala, I think, and she's a Amazonian. She's the one who like watches the well, so she's not a new resurrectee. All of the new resurrectees look fairly young, right? Uh, they look they're in new bodies, right? So they look young, they look healthy, right? I was just expecting a bit more visual diversity because of the fact that it's supposed to be resurrecting people uh, from all over the world, right? But there's no real diversity there. It's not even diversity in age. Like I understand maybe not wanting to depict, say, like little kids or teenagers because just too dark a thing to have to think about the fact that young people, that kids and teenagers sadly die in man's world because of violence. So I can understand maybe not including them. But there is this huge age range you can still work with, right? So I just found that weird, right? Especially for a company that's so high on diversity, there wasn't too much visual diversity, in my opinion, with the new resurrectees, right? But as characters, thus far they're blank slates, which is fine in my opinion. I mean, they just got there in the story. Even when it covers Nubia's resurrection, is consistent in the fact that when a woman's resurrected, she doesn't remember anything, right? And they actually do make some to do about that in the comic itself. Talking about, we have a few of them talking about how, well, what if I was a pianist? What if I was a marine biologist? In my old life, right? And there are a few where like some are like very close to remembering, others don't remember anything. So I will say this much: the story and the writing did do a good job with establishing the fact that the new recruits have amnesia, right? I think, at least for me, it felt like audience standing because I'm like, yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on either. So I thought they were fine. They don't play a role yet, so it's not a big deal, right? So there's that. But my biggest issue with this comic is Nubia's characterization. To me, the worst characterization wise, in the story is Nubia herself. And I'll tell you why. Because Nubia is incredibly indecisive in this comic, and it makes no sense. There is a reason why I went over her past in previous iterations of the character, because it establishes the fact that this is a woman who is assertive, who is aggressive, who would have been raised to be this way from the youngest age, being raised by Ares, for crying out loud. Yet when it comes to Doom's doorway, the doorway she once guarded, the woman is entirely passive and indecisive, and to me, it makes no sense. Because I'm not sure what the comic is trying to tell us about her. Part of me thinks that perhaps Ayala and Williams were trying to show that Nubia as queen is tempered, right? And she's not going to just jump at the first sign of trouble, right? And maybe that's the case. Maybe they're just trying to show that she's thoughtful and she's not going to act without a proper amount of information. But it doesn't help here. If that was what they were going for, right? If tempered and thoughtful was what they were going for here, it does not work. She comes across as incredibly passive and indecisive. She never does anything to address the literal threat at the door, right? Because Philippus brings to her attention that they have guards down there, and that they have to switch the guards. I guess there's a rotation or something going on. It's not really made clear, right? But Philippus keeps telling her, this is a problem, Nubia. This is a problem. There's even one scene where one panel, I should say, where they're talking, and Philippus flat out tells her that she's been trying to avoid talking to her about this, and Nubia's response is I'm not avoiding, I'm just contemplating. No, she's avoiding. She's avoiding, but the story will not overtly call it out. They won't have Philippus specifically say you're not doing anything, right? And again, I understand first issue, and I understand that it's not a one shot, it's not a self-contained story. But if they're gonna have this conversation, right, a little more should be made about the fact that she's not doing anything. So I'd like to believe they were just trying to make her thoughtful, right, but just didn't know how to write it. Or the issue is that they are trying to make her indecisiveness a noticeable character flaw, right? Which would not be bad, believe it or not. except for one thing. It makes no sense for a character like Nubia to be indecisive. Again, there's a reason why I went over her background. This is an assertive, aggressive, take charge, right? Lead from the front type character. Her problem, in my opinion, would not be a lack of assertiveness, right? Or an unwillingness to tackle an issue, especially one so close to her, being that it involves a job she used to have, right? To protect her fellow Amazons. If anything, if the point was to make her passiveness and indecisiveness a flaw, then they're describing the wrong character. If Nubia's gonna have a flaw that's related to her personality that makes sense, the flaw would be that she would react too quickly. She would react too aggressively, right? Her warrior brain would activate before her more strategic brain, because again, raised by Aries, right? Her first solution would be violence to destroy the threat. That is the warrior mindset. There is a threat, I must kill the threat to protect the people. That is what would make sense. That is what would fit this image. But that's not what she does. And that's the worst part. She does not do anything. I repeat, she does not do anything. The story is the Amazons who don't do anything, and she is the head. She doesn't order any reinforcements, right, of Doom's doorway. She doesn't go down there personally to inspect it herself, right? She doesn't do anything to address the problem that she has been clearly made aware of, and it's implied in the dialogue between her and Philippus in several panels that they have had this conversation before. So it's a long standing problem. It is not new. Yet she does nothing. You have a warrior action hero as the face of your book, and you literally have her do absolutely nothing about the emerging threat. The point of the first issue is to establish things. Establish who the heroine is, establish what the issues are, establish what's at stake. Right? What's at stake, right? The threat is Doom's doorway opening, right? What's at stake is Themyscira, because you have one character who has a vision of Themyscira burning, right? You now need to establish your heroine. What is she going to do about this? Give us some hint, some idea of how she's going to address this very real problem that threatens the entire island, which she is now queen of. And we get talking. And we get nothing. Again, no assertiveness, no orders, no going to see the problem. I wanted Olivia Mira Armstrong to like come into this book, chuck her aside, and basically take over. That's what I wanted to see. Because honestly, the very aggressive, hyper aggressiveness, I would say, of Armstrong, if you're familiar with Full Metal Alchemist, is exactly what I was expecting from Nubia in this, in some fashion, right? And I didn't get that. Didn't get that at all. She just stands there. She literally stands there and does nothing. And quite frankly, right, I cannot respect a hero, real or imagined, who stands around and does nothing when they know of a threat. It's one thing if you don't know. How do you act if you don't know, right? But she knows. She knows. And she doesn't do a damn thing to address the problem. I'm not saying you have to solve it in this issue, but show her taking some sort of action to address the issue. The damn doorway is opening. You're about to lose your land. Everyone's gonna die because you didn't move your ass. It's basically what I'm saying. And for me as a reader, it's frustrating. I don't read superhero comics to see indecisive people. It's annoying. So, in my opinion, believe it or not, because of that, she was the worst character, in my opinion. I hate to say that, but she was. And it makes me not want to read it again or follow up with issue 2 because now I don't like the heroine. Right? But on top of that, so she was the worst character. Guess who the best character is? Guess. Guess. The Well of Souls. The Well of Souls is the best character to me. You know why? Because they kept it simple. It's simple. It explains what the well does. There's a little old lady there who watches it. That's it. The well got the best characterization out of the story, and your lead got the worst. Modern day writing in comics, people. This is what we are dealing with, and you wonder why I can't read this stuff anymore. Right? So basically, like I've said before, the end of the story, right? Doom's doorway opens, and who knows what's going to happen in issue 2. I don't see myself covering issue 2. I don't care, quite frankly. I don't care. Nothing in this story made me interested to want to see what happens next, to see how Nubia addresses it. And again, because they don't even show her even attempting to address it, now I'm mad at the lead character and I don't want to see her do anything. Very sad, right? The art is good, the colors could have been better. The trans drama is drama just to bring attention to the book, though I will say that I do think it has given birth to a lot of interesting ideas and interesting conversations, which sadly I don't think will ever go beyond Twitter. Right? So, yeah, that's it. The Amazon, the new Amazons don't have much of a role, which like I said before, makes sense. It's consistent. I will give the story this much. It is consistent, at least in the first issue, in what it establishes, right? About certain people, like the new Amazons, not knowing who or what they are or where they are, being confused. It's consistent in that. But overall, yeah, I mean, not a good comic in my opinion. Art's good, everything else, not so much. Not a compelling story, nothing to really keep me involved or interested. The heroine is too passive for my taste, especially given the background she's had over the years. And I want to be clear, this is not meant to be hate. I'm not trying to necessarily dunk on the book or dunk on Vita Ayala or Stephanie Williams. This is my sincere thoughts and review of it. I am trying to highlight specific issues in the book itself, whether it's the art, whether it's the writing, whether it's the characterization, right, that I feel that had they been addressed, right, would have made the story better. So I hope that this review is received as just that, a review, not not a attack or hate or anything or like dunking or trying to get it owned. It's nothing like that. This is just my jumbled thoughts about a comic book that looks nice but doesn't read well at all and is not interesting to me. If you liked it, wonderful. I hope you enjoy it. I did not. It's not a recommend, and if I had to give it a letter grade overall, I would probably give it a D minus. And the only thing saving it from an F is the fact that the art is good, in my opinion. The art is solid, it's serviceable, not perfect, but I've seen worse. So anyway, that's my review of Nubia, Nubia and the Amazons issue 1. Please let me know what you think in the comments. I know this ran a bit long, but that's a ramble for you. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you all around. Bye.